Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Crucible Tarot. I wanted to share my thoughts, of course, on the most recent of updates, of course, which was revealed last night. Jason Arday, who lectured at Cambridge University, was found dead, and of course has sent quite a few shockwaves, considering a lot of the most recent updates that have been taking place related to the issues I had been experiencing, the secrets that come out, and I just wanted to kind of share my own perspective on the whole matter, because I think it's really important for us not to just simply look at it as a person who was defrauding and who was trying to do certain things, but rather to reframe it into a situation as to what are the processes that are taking place with an individual when they experience these types of behaviors or fight these kind of shadows. And so this is just kind of my thoughts that were kind of loosely scribbled around, and hopefully they'll just shed some light on the situation. If not, we can at least have a bit of understanding as to what this whole matter was about. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, when we look at the entire matter, we look at the situation of shadow work. And there was some lyrics I was listening to when I was in a cafe, just kind of doing some things, planning a holiday and all that. But one of the songs that came up was Neon Gravestones by Twentyonepilots. And they're one of my favorite bands for the simple reason that they do talk quite a bit about shadow work and the different kind of personalities that interact within an individual when they are doing such. Very, very thought-provoking lyrics. I'll actually share some of them with you. And one of the things I saw in the lyrics was this here. So they talk a little bit about, get this to work. Bear with me, it's a new platform. So one of the parts of the lyrics that came to my mind when I saw this was verse 3, where he says, "Don't get me wrong, the rise in awareness is beating a stigma that no longer scares us. For the sake of discussion, in spirit of fairness, could we please give this some room for a new point of view? And could it be true that some could be tempted to use this mistake as a form of aggression, a form of succession, a form of a weapon, thinking I'll teach them while I'm refusing the lesson? It won't resonate in our minds. I'm not respecting what was left behind, just pleading that it does not get glorified. Maybe swap out what it was that we hold so high. Find your grandparents or someone of age. Pay some respects to the path that they paid, to life they were dedicated. Now that should be celebrated." So looking at this, the song is, of course, about the termination or cessation of life. I'm not going to say the whole words in there, of course, this is still YouTube. And hopefully we can get a little bit more clarity as to what's going through the mind of an individual who creates a persona for themselves in which they feel obliged to push away their shadow self. Now, oftentimes we talk on this channel about the integration of the light and the dark, and it's the whole process of alchemy, going through the different stages, which are, of course, Negretto, it's Albedo, it's Citronella, or I keep forgetting how to pronounce it, and then also finally Rubello or Rubedo. And so in all of these 4 stages, we look at the process of breaking down the self and getting to a stage in which we achieve an age of enlightenment, or a stage of enlightenment in our lives, where we process negativity and finally bring ourselves to a place where we're able to overcome the negativity within. And when we speak of good and evil, we speak about that which comes from within, and what stage of vibration are you in, when you are dealing with these crises. So with Jason Arday, this lyrics were, for me, quite important, because what they teach us is that it's important for us to know that when we resort to taking our own, place on this earth, taking ourselves away from the planet, if you know what I mean, Oftentimes people do it as a way to end pain. Other times people will do it as a way of making sure that others feel pain as well. And I'm not here to judge Arday as to what was going on in his mind. There could be a myriad of reasons as to why he lived the life that he did. It could have been from a lack of boundaries, maybe too many strict boundaries, maybe a poor sense of self, maybe too high of a sense of self. It could have been brain chemistry. It could actually just be, the whole nature versus nurture, perspective on the matter. But no matter what the situation was, the outcome was what we read on the news yesterday. And it's a very unfortunate event because, when I look at the whole matter, I see a person who was, you could say, deeply troubled, but in my personal opinion, he was a person who was facing his own shadow. And the problem is that when you face your shadow and you refuse to deal with it, you then become consumed by the light that is let in through, a series of events, which sheds light on specifically what's going on with your shadow. And because of this piercing ability to reflect on the negative aspects of yourself, people who flee from their negativity, their own personal negativity or the problems within, they tend to be consumed by the light or even by the shadow, if you want to say it actually. With Jason, I find that when it was revealed some of the things that were going on in his life, some of the kinds of personality traits he had, or some of the things that he did whilst in his tenure at Cambridge University. I think he was there in 2023 where he was inducted as a teacher. And he was, apparently the youngest professor that was to teach at Cambridge University. He was oftentimes seen as quite a bit of a maverick individual that was held up in quite a high, profile light. And a lot of it was due to the fact that he was a minority, of course, and very young in all of this. And I think that whether or not, Cambridge University chose to vet him properly, they wanted to try to at least give him a chance to prove his worth within the lecturing setting or the classroom setting. So whatever the reasons that Cambridge gave to this, also Liverpool University, who oversaw his dissertation and his time under his PhD work. And of course, the kind of chaos that came out of both of those situations have led us to this moment that we're sat in now. And some of the things that were reported in the news was that he had made some quite deceptive claims about the kind of life experiences that he had, where he said he was learning to read or write until he hadn't learned how to read or write until age 11. He had reportedly had a brain tumor, if I'm not mistaken. That he claimed that he had run 30 marathons in 30 days or something around that matter. That he had appeared on the show 7 Up, which hadn't even taken place during his lifetime, as he was born in 1985, and the show took place in the 60s. And of course, the most glaringly apparent one was the massive amount of plagiarism within his doctoral thesis. One of the things that we have to see that Jason needed to understand that you must alchemize whatever shadow that you have that you were refusing to look at. And I don't think that he was quite the person who wanted to look directly into his shadow and to see precisely what kind of issues were underlying there. And this is quite common amongst many people, especially in the social media world, where we are constantly trying to put on a persona or an air of appearance in a time in which we're not actually able to produce the material results of that. So if I claim that I'm the Queen of England, for example, and there's nothing within the material world that can demonstrate that, or even in the spiritual world, then the burden of proof is on the individual. Oftentimes, people will put on these air of appearances, or they'll put on these types of masks so that they can escape the reality of themselves. And the problem with that is that when you go through a dark night of the soul, which is what exactly Mr. Arday went through during his period, all of these revelations came out. We noticed that his response to that was not a very healthy one. In fact, it was to obfuscate personal accountability and responsibility. Now, these are defense mechanisms that are brought up throughout life to defend against anything that threatens that that persona of false self. And through the false self, we then experience the dark night of the soul, which forces us to individuate and integrate our true selves into the person that we claim to be, or that we have built. So this is in tarot. This is the devil card, the put on of, the put on of kind of self-limiting beliefs, things of that nature, and then the tower, which actually destroys all of that. So, Jason Arday, when he was found out to have all of these different things taking place in his life, that was his tower moment, which then forced him into the first stage of the alchemic process, which was Nigredo. And unfortunately, he did not survive that process, which, rest in peace. This is, again, not to demean him, but I want to just make sure that people understand that we all have a karmic path that we're on. We all have our personal things that we have to work through. Arday is no exception. And in his particular case, it's important for us to understand this on a hermetic, or at least a spiritual awareness of what happens in these types of situations, and dare I say, make lessons of this particular matter so that it can teach others who may choose to walk this path, or who may have these kind of qualities within themselves. Some of the things I noticed about Arday, and I'm not sure what his birth chart fully is as far as his time that he was born and everything, but I wanted to at least share just some of these things here. When we look at his birth chart, it's important for us to notice some of the things that we see. Of course, he is a Taurus, and he has a Taurus sun, he has a Capricorn moon, and then additionally, what I believe is an Aries ascendant with Venus in the first house, Venus conjunct ascendant, as well as Mercury conjunct ascendant, or at least Mercury in the first house. So personal appearance is shown directly to the masses. Additionally, his desire to appear a certain way, or to be to have a very pleasant appearance and to be liked. These were kind of the afflictions that are present within his personal chart. And as we notice here, that there are some squares between himself and his moon and his Venus, squares between his ascendant and his moon, his Venus and his moon, and his Venus and Neptune as well. So with these strong Neptunian aspects, we notice that there's a person here who has an air of appearance, because these are, dealing with his ascendant. Aries makes him very competitive. And then additionally, with Venus squaring Neptune, that creates a sense of low self-esteem. I actually have this within my own chart, and that's been one of the things that I've been learning, how to battle or how to deal with, my own personal life. So I empathize with him in that sense, and I try to understand where people are coming from. It doesn't excuse the behaviors, but it does at least give us the ability to sympathize or to empathize, depending on our own personal nature. Then, of course, with Mercury, I do believe his Mercury is square his Neptune as well. And what this teaches us is that we have to be mindful of the way that we speak, that what we speak is actually the truth, and that truth is reflected in our words and our actions simultaneously. And this is probably something that he suffered with quite a bit as well. Anyone who has like a Mercury square Neptune will suffer from deceptive communications quite a bit. I do just want to also point out Sun square Jupiter also can give an air of grandiosity in the way they appear to people, with the sun being in the first house. Theoretically, whichever house it would actually be in based on his actual ascendant, that would put him at this a similar kind of vibe. So Sun square Jupiter would give that air of grandiosity to him. And again, these are just things that we have to consider when we talk about what happened yesterday. You look at Arday's actual aspect right here. This is very important. We have Mars opposite Uranus. So this is a very sudden, sometimes brash and foolish kind of way of thinking. I know several people who have this in their charts, and they tend to lash out. They tend to have issues with anger management, and they can also do things that are very impulsive that they may regret later. And I'm assuming that this is reflected in his actions that he took last night. And so with a combination of these aspects, I mean, he has very good aspects as well. We do look at the fact that, you know, his Venus, I think this is his Venus sextile Mars. That's quite a good aspect. This talks about being able to have a good balance between your actions and your ability to kind of pursue things that you really are passionate about. Good sense of going after what you want. You know, there's also the sun trine the moon, which tells us quite a bit about being a sensitive character as well. I think his sensitivity has both good and, you know, good and poor aspects, but I would say in his life overall, he was a good, sensitive, caring soul. Then additionally, we have Saturn square Jupiter, which can sometimes create issues with swaying between joyful optimism and pessimism as well. But, you know, pulling back away from this just gives us a small snapshot into his life. Some of the things that theoretically could have been taking place, you know, in his natal chart. Now, I just wanted to kind of step back and also look at some of the other things that we think about when we talk about his approach to life. Now, oftentimes when you deal with people who are fantasists, it could even be something as, you know, as underlying as like a traumatic experience where the mind creates a bubble to protect itself when it deals with negative stimuli or when it deals with negative sense of self. And so this is quite, you know, this is quite reflective, especially in people like Carl Beach. There was a story maybe about 5 to 10 years ago where there was a man, Carl Beach, who he made some fantasist comments about his own life where under police investigation it found out it wasn't true. And he did face, I do believe he faced prison time because of that as well. But if you look up his name, Carl Beach, you'll be able to see a little bit more information about him. With Arday, I kind of look at, you know, the concept of Schrodinger's happiness as I look at oftentimes people who are placed on the internet and they have this appearance of happiness to the external world. When we look at Arday's chart, we have both Neptune and Moon in his 10th house, which can speak about you know, quite a visionary approach to his life and his outward career and his way of relating to the external world. But it can also leave a very murky and cloudy and at times deceptive, you know, outward appearance, especially within his career being the 10th house. So when we talk about Schrodinger's happiness, this is quite an affliction that is not just an Arday situation. This is something that happens when people with certain shadow aspects or elements project themselves into the real world. But they do it through things like social media and their public persona. Oftentimes when you deal with people like this, they will project the air that everything is fine, life is great, everything's happy. But what is not shown are the things that are taking place within the dynamic within their relationships, possibly within the truth of the matter of which they're dealing with their own career or their own life aspects, things of that nature, or even within themselves as they face their own shadow. Now, whatever aspects were taking place in Arday's life brought out this shadow self, and it was something he was terrified of. Having these things revealed or exposed leaves him feeling vulnerable. And then the response to that was to double down on the fantasism, that safe place that he had created for himself, where he does feel like a positive role model and a citizen and a person who does accomplishes great things. And the sad thing that I felt about it was the fact that he was that person. It wasn't a fantasy. The problem is that when it's conducted or if it's expressed in a certain way that is not reflected in the material world, there is no correlation. And of course, as above, so below. You may have these ideas lofty in your mind, but if they're not reflected in your actions in the real world, it creates a schism between the two of them. And this is the schism of fantasism. And people can call it different things based on psychology. Some people will call it, some people mentioned in other podcasts that he may have been afflicted with, NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. He may have had bipolar disorder. I'm not here to diagnose because I'm not a professional. And the reason why I'm just taking it at the angle that I'm taking it now is because this is what I study. And this is my, I guess you want to call it passion, or, my way of relating on YouTube. Now, with the Schrodinger's happiness, the problem with it is that the more you project an outward appearance of happiness and of accomplishment and of certain things within your public persona, the more we find that oftentimes the people who are not facing their shadow are the exact opposite on the inside. So when they find that their shadow is consuming them, or they're going through that dark night of the soul, then what they want to do is to double down on the fantasism that they show people on the outside. When there is no safe place to run, then that is precisely when we get situations like what he went through. And we've seen people who have had fall from graces all the time. I do believe we had people like Wes Watson, who was the type of person who was that way. And, he says that he's getting out of prison. He's trying to turn his life around. He wants to do great things. And then he slowly goes back into that shadow self, where he then starts to live a life of crime. He has to deal with a very sensitive ego, things of that nature, which then spills over to abuse and, assault charges, things of that nature, where that shadow self does come out and he's forced to face it now that he's going to prison. And this is why, from a personal point of view, and even from a person who has had to deal with their own matters in life, you have to face your shadow. You have to do the shadow work. And this is a constant work in progress. For me specifically, I know that it is very, very important for people to be able to do this gradually so that things don't sneak up on us in the worst way possible as life progresses, or as a situation progresses in our life through that dark night of the soul. This is quite important for people to be able to undertake this kind of shadow work. And if they can't do it on themselves, at least through the help of a professional who can guide them through the process. When you become a fantasist, you are actually guarding yourself rather than facing yourself. And for me, I think that's the path, or that's the route that Arday took when he decided to, resign from Cambridge. And within that 24 to 48 hours after his resignation, which I do believe that, it was reported that he had actually plagiarized his resignation letter, which I think it's very unfortunate, because he could have at least been genuine in the nature that he could express sincere accountability for what took place, but that did not actually happen. But that was a trauma response. That was a kind of subconscious response that his mind took to dealing with the revelation of his shadow. And as a result of that, that's that's what consumed him following his resignation period. So my final thought is that I just want to make it clear in my post that number one, rest in peace, Jason Arday. And it's not because I support or condone what he did, but what he has done, he's shed light into the type of lifestyles that are prevalent within our world, which create the schism between the real self and the projected self. And when we are dealing with our shadow work, our shadow forces us to be authentic individuals, come good or ill. And me personally, having a black moon Lilith conjunct my ascendant, and Neptune conjunct ascendant, this forces me to dissolve my ego and forces me to constantly go through the dark night of the soul in order to face my authentic self. It is a painful process. And I understand that the people who go through these processes, it's not, everyone responds to it differently. It's not easy. And so all I can say is rest in peace. And then I hope that, in the future, people can survive that process, because it can take everything away should you choose to go that path, or it can make you as radiant as ever. So these are just my thoughts on that. Thank you very much. This has once again been Crucible Tarot. I can only I can't really say just like, share, subscribe. I just want to say, possibly share this message. Share this message if it helps someone, including yourself, who's going through a very difficult time, because this is one of the reasons why I started this, YouTube channel, the tarot channel, in the first place, because I at least wanted to make a difference in my life and in the lives of other people, not by the happy, fluffy stuff, but additionally through the darkness. Thank you.